Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my September wrap-up. The first book that I read in September is The Library of Souls by Richard Denny. Richard Denny is a booktuber and I'll leave a link to his channel down below because I can't remember the exact name of his channel. But he does review a lot of middle grade fiction. This book follows the character of Simon Santiago. He is a 13-year-old boy and he is able to communicate with ghosts. He goes around with his camera and is able to capture the ghosts on camera. His uncle Monty is exploiting this. Years ago his parents died and he has been left in the care of this uncle who is using his gifts to make himself money. In this book they're going to the Childermas Library because there's been talk of a lot of supernatural goings on there. And that's all I'm going to say. This book is very appropriate for any child that is into horror fiction. As I read it, it reminded me so much of the Goosebumps books I used to read as a child. Richard definitely knows the market that he is writing for and knew how to create tension. There are twists, and even when you think there are twists that are over, there builds upon those twists. I'm not saying that this is the best piece of literature ever. There are definitely points where I thought that things could have been expanded on and there were ways things could have been done differently, but the way that I thought of it was that if they were done differently they probably wouldn't have worked for the middle grade market. It would have lost some of its pace, and because we have got quite a fast-paced book here, although there are certain things that could have been written differently in order to fully achieve that tension, I think that because Richard has written such a short, fast-paced book, I was very happy to be made feel nostalgic from this book, reminding me of the things that I used to enjoy as a child, and I think that this would be very appropriate for children. Next I read Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. I read this book because I read 3 Things About Elsie last month and my friend Lily said that this was quite reminiscent of that. It follows the character of Maud, who is rather forgetful, and she keeps thinking that her friend Elizabeth is missing. Whilst you have this story of Maud, who is this forgetful character, you also go back a certain amount of years and see her talking about her childhood and the mystery revolving around the loss of her sister. This is an incredibly tense book, and I'm quite glad to be seeing books that deal more with the aspect of getting old and being forgetful and the way that we treat people, because you get to read about the frustrations of a character with dementia. And I think that this aspect of the book was done quite well, because we're able to see how difficult it is for Maud, but also how difficult it is for the people around her. And Healy has written this in such a way that you trust Maud completely with these historical passages, but should we trust her now? And we're able to see the 2 different sides of this person who, just because she has developed dementia, we're ultimately casting her side as being untrustworthy, and also using her as the narrator and gives us the perfect unreliable narrator. I said that with 3 Things About Elsie and I'll say it here. I enjoyed this book. I thought the book was likeable. I thought there was a definite darkness to it that I didn't find in 3 Things About Elsie. I felt like it was very measured prose, very contained. Healy definitely knew how to write. I liked the book. I just wasn't astounded by it. Next I read Harmless Like You by Rowan Hisayo Buchanan. I did not like this book. It was listed as one of the best books of this year. I have done a review which I will link below, but I have already donated it to the charity shop. I don't usually talk about the children's books that I have read to my nephew, but because this is by a prominent booktuber and because it has been talked about a lot, I decided I wanted to give my 2 cents about Franklin's Flying Bookshop by Jen Campbell. Now, as soon as I heard that this book was coming out, I knew that it would be perfect for my nephew, because my nephew is 3 and he likes dragons. The first words out of his mouth when we opened Franklin's Flying Bookshop were, "That's a great dragon." And then we read the book. And when Franklin was going out and meeting villagers, my nephew would exclaim along with them, "What are you?" And he was asking questions about Vikings and longships and things that we don't usually come across in the other books we read. He was asking questions about. He was questioning the story, and he was really becoming involved in this, and I was very grateful to Jen for writing it, because it also saved me a Sunday of chasing around imaginary dinosaurs in my house. Because, you know, it's fun every once in a while, but every single week, 2 hours searching for dinosaurs that aren't there, because sometimes get a bit wearing. I did have to read this 4 times in a row, and each time I was just very happy to read the book, and I was very grateful to have a story that my nephew got quite involved in and that he liked the characters. But this is a book that he did have me pick up, and he did have me reread to him, and it was just a bit heartwarming, really. So it was nice. It was a nice Sunday read. I can't remember what the weather was like, but we really enjoyed ourselves. So thank you to Jen Campbell for writing this book and allowing me to not have to chase dinosaurs. Next, I finished listening to The Love Story of Miss Queenie Hennessy by Rachel Joyce. I finished The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry last month, and I wasn't going to get this book straight away, but I really wanted to spend more time with the characters because I just really enjoyed Harold Fry. I think that it is going to be one of my favourite books of this year, if not ever. And I knew going into this, because of Harold Fry, that this story was going to be a bit darker. It was going to explore Queenie Hennessy's past, and we know that she isn't going to come to the best conclusion with her story. This story was dark, much more so than Harold Fry, but I really adored this. Rachel Joyce has such a great way of capturing voices, and I don't know whether it comes from writing radio plays, I don't know whether she just has a great ear for dialogue, but I just think she captured Queenie Hennessy's voice and idiosyncrasies so well, and I really enjoyed this story. Not as much as Harold Fry, but it was still there. It was still a fantastic book, and I really enjoyed listening to this book. And I listen to these audiobooks usually before anyone else gets to work. At the moment I'm reading one because I learnt to drive, and I passed my driving test, so now I can sit in the car and read outside. But at the time, listening to Queenie Hennessy as I walked around the shop, checked the float, did the tills, made sure that I looked the tiniest bit presentable because I don't have a mirror at home. It was just nice. And it was like walking around with a friend telling you all about her life and telling you a story. And we knew it was going to be dark because we knew what actually went on in the story, but we were getting some more answers and some more idea of the lives of the characters that had affected Harold and his wife. And that was quite nice to do. And I think they work quite well together as companion pieces. And so I feel like you can't have one without the other now, if that makes any sense. And recommend that everyone go out. And I'd probably listen to it, but that's because I really like Celia Imrie, so what can you do? Next, my good friend Margaret Holbrook released her latest poetry collection, and that is Not Exactly Life. This is a collection of poetry that explores the lives of women throughout history, and also the women that are known to Margaret from her own life. You have Elizabeth Gaskell, Emmeline Pankhurst, you had Dolly Shepherd, the aviatrix, and all these characters that I didn't know throughout history, and these personal characters to Margaret. So the poems in here feature women that everybody will know in their lives, and that gives it this almost nostalgic feeling, and the feeling that the poems are quite personal. I'm quite the fan of a personal poem myself. I like learning more about the author's lives, and I feel like the author's impressions about other characters can give you a very good impression of who the poet is themselves. The poems within here give you a sense of the work and the research that has gone into creating these poems, and also what the poet is interested in. And I know that I might be a bit biased because I am friends with Margaret and she has helped me with a lot of my work over the years, but I really do appreciate and think that the poetry in here is quite great. Even if you don't want to know more about the lives of women throughout history, these are women that you should definitely know about, and I think you need to meet them, so I definitely recommend going out and getting this book. And finally, we have The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan. Sadly, this book disappointed me. I've owned it for a few years now, and really expected a lot. I expected something quite fairy tale-esque, and whilst you get that, you definitely get the idea that these characters are pulled straight from fairy tales. The motives and the way motives clash and the experiences of the characters could definitely be seen as being quite reminiscent of fairy tales. There were certain Shakespearean aspects in the way that the motives were, because you'd have characters that wanted to do one thing, but another character was stopping them from doing that because he thought a different character wanted something else, only to realise that all of their motives were clashing with one another. And I just wanted to see all of that come out. Instead, we were left with this almost soap opera ending, where the writer realised that she had to finish the book at some point, and the ending felt really rushed, and whereas everything had been going at quite a steady pace, and I was really enjoying the pace we were going and really enjoying being with these characters, and I thought the prose was quite nice at this point, and then the ending happened, and I just thought that it had been an entire waste of my time. And I'm finding that a lot that at the moment, that people don't seem to know how to write an ending to a book, and it's becoming quite disappointing, which is also another reason I want to be going and reading more classics, because I feel like they know what they're doing. Anyway, them's the books. If you have read any of these books and would like to discuss them, please feel free to do so down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.